There are a ton of recent weirdos on the internet, and especially in the fitness content production space. We've talked about it all. Murders, scams, criminal records, animal abuse, literally the wildest of things, yet it seems to fly over people's heads, and my channel is chronically undersubscribed to. Don't know why. Maybe you could help with that. But maybe you've seen this guy on your feed as you're scrolling through content. And to find any substance on this individual, looks like we're going to have to scroll further down into the realms of his social media. His as in Eric Bugenhagen? Bugenhagen.
Kaboom?
Yes, Rico. Kaboom.
But the vast majority of his videos are just basically deadlifts with an obscure screaming so loud that you actually might prolapse an anus just listening to him. But while you might actually just think that this guy is your standard run-of-the-mill meathead on Instagram posting his lifts with a dildo bar, there's actually a lot to this story, and it's an interesting one. This is Eric, a guy I've been recommended to make a video on very many times because he's just apparently some kind of crazy. Well, I've done some digging, and unfortunately, I wasn't able to find anything really terrible about this individual, which maybe is a good thing compared to some of the videos we've made. I can, however, certainly say he's an interesting character, with a history that you may not have expected. If we go over and take a look at Eric's Instagram, besides all of the content he makes, there's not a whole lot to go off of. He is just actually who he is. There doesn't seem to be any personal stories or reels, and his bio is just pretty much bland. It's a link to his supplement company, which is pretty normal. He just has the basic products, the stuff that generally works and makes the most money. Pre-workouts, fat burners, plant steroids, well, the ones that don't do anything at all, I guess, the usual.
90% of you are freaking judgmental assholes.
He also often tags his lovely wife, which seems to be in his content quite regularly. And lastly, he links Thick as Frick, which is a clothing company made by Eric, which, as the name would definitely let you know, it basically sells generic meathead attire. And generic isn't a bad thing, because I think oftentimes generic is what works in this modern day and age. We see that in the video game industry, at least, games that try to push narratives and definitely agendas and really push the cultural acceptance of most things don't do so well, even if they have multi-billion-dollar budgets. But the games that spend very little on the game and generally just do the same thing that games have always done, really make a good story, have generally good combat and gameplay, seem to do exceedingly well. Same is true with this kind of stuff. Usually the products that are the most simple work the best and have the most efficacy within a day-to-day life usually turn the most bucks. But if we go over to his YouTube channel, this is where things actually start to get pretty interesting about this guy. Eric has built somewhat of a cult following up on YouTube, which I think is so cool because these little groups of people all have their own dynamics and niches. He boasts over 300,000 subscribers, which, fairly enough, he's earned over a decade of posting. Now, to be fair, I've been doing that and haven't quite gotten there. But we're getting there, guys. We're getting there. I think the thing that he did super well to get to where he is right now, which I certainly didn't do, was start out similar to how he is now, posting relatively short clips of some very intense and impressive lifts. Oddly enough, seems like he tried to do some weird song covers, and that is part of the reason why people are calling him crazy, no doubt.
Welcome to our fortress world. Take some time to show you around.
Which he's even actually tried to pull a Mike Israetel and talk about philosophy. It's pretty interesting, I guess. I don't know. Mike was justifying communism, so there's that. This isn't that bad, maybe.
Like all I feel is rage.
But after a solid time of just scrolling through hundreds and hundreds of his videos, we come across a particularly important video titled TV Debut and Getting Shredded Tidbit. And just before we get into all that, I like the way he's actually using the word tidbit. If you look at his older videos, he really embraces like the OG YouTuber style of content, literally just sharing tidbits, quote unquote, of their lives. Anyways, let's just take a quick snippet of this video.
The half gallon of green tea, lift, incline treadmill, sprints, practice, got home, had a bunch of just like Cliff bars and pasta and stuff like that, and then I did just overhead pressing. Now also, guys, I just want to fill you in that I haven't been able to upload quite as frequently lately, and it's just because I've been getting really busy at work I just made my NXT TV debut.
This is very interesting. Now, if we go down to the comments and look, Eric links us to the actual clips which were aired.
An encore performance from Eric Bugenhagen.
And just like that, it's all starting to make some sense. Before this video, I had lots of people calling him crazy and whatnot, and with just a brief inspection, you might certainly think that is the case. But no, Eric is different, at least for the most part. He ultimately is just playing a character, and I mean, he's a literal television performer. I say performer because clearly we all know wrestling is fake. Don't get butthurt. I mean, you could get butthurt, it's up to you. I think wrestlers would be the types to find the most butt hurting. But seriously, he spent his whole career putting on a show and ultimately being a character, which is exactly what you need to do when you're getting sponsored by these massive brands. If you're not bringing massive viewerships and generally being a highly volatile character, you're just simply not gonna make the viewerships happen. It's the Greg Doucette archetype. And sadly, while I've only been building up this awesome story about his wrestling history for a few moments, that's kind of exactly what happened to him. Let me explain. If we head over to his Wikipedia page, or even just Google Rick Boggs, which is his show name he went by for most of his career, there seems to be claims that he was simply a retired American pro wrestler, except that's not entirely true. You see, in 2022, Eric was lucky enough to star in the very first fight in the night of WrestleMania. And for those of you who don't know, WWE's biggest show is WrestleMania. It is essentially their form of the World Championship, if you can even call that such a thing, because it's all scripted beforehand. And in fact, please correct me in the comments because I am debilitatingly uneducated on anything WWE. So please, if I'm saying things that are idiocy, just tell me and I will accept it. Now, I would argue that that was some well-deserved screen time for Eric. Now, that's besides the point, because whilst the fight started, not even long after, Eric ended up tearing his quad off of the bone.
It's a very even start, but then Shinsuke gets the hot tag to Boogs, who dominates for a little while, but then he tries to lift both Usos up on his shoulders, and then his injured knee gives out, and it's hard to tell if this is real or not. It would feed into the storyline, I guess, building into this match, but at the same time, he didn't reappear for like the entirety of the match, so hopefully he's okay, and if it was real, hopefully he recovers quickly.
And I can assure you, this was very real. It wasn't just for television, but if you don't believe me, let's take it from him himself.
WrestleMania 38, did that go from the highest of highs to the lowest of lows?
I was supposed to be like this documentary too. It was like, oh yeah, like, it's being filmed all day. I'm like, oh, it's your first WrestleMania, and then we're gonna ask you like after the match, and then I just like blow my tendon. And by the way, when people say like, oh, I tore my quad, because I see that all the time, and it's like they're still walking and stuff. It's like, what did you tear, bro? What did you tear? Because my tendon was like ripped off the bone on both sides and ripped all the way through. So
from this point forward, it just kind of derailed his entire career. As we can see in 2023, Eric was formally released, in other words, let go or fired from the WWE, and as he stated in an interview, he kind of saw the writing on the wall, meaning he knew it was his time and it was coming. So what exactly happened? Now, just to preface again, I am no wrestling politic expert. I know very little about the situation. I know that there's lots of conspiracists out there on this whole thing, but I am not one of them. But there is a lot of people on Reddit and other platforms who have a lot to say about the matter. And I just wanted to kind of take a look at, see what people said about this whole thing. The injury really derailed his career. It was absolutely on fire before that. Then when he came back and went from 80s glam rocker to Freddie Mercury wannabe, who didn't even have a guitar anymore, like his whole shtick was playing the electric guitar. So they took that away from him and he had to play the air guitar and air drums for some reason, and it just didn't make sense. Crowds love the guitar entrances if they're done right, and they neutered both him and Elias, then fired them both. He should have come back as a cocky heel musician and not as Freddie Mercury ripoff with no guitar. And from what we know, this does seem to be true. When he got back into it, he did get some fights, but they took away the majority of his character and definitely killed his entertainment factor quite a bit. And it's curious to see, like, why would they do that on purpose? Someone here in the YouTube comments is suggesting that Eric might possibly be the most ideal WWE star one could imagine. He had amazing charisma, brought tons of viewerships, and could have fit really any role they gave him, and yet they kind of just killed him off quietly, which is actually something you hear a lot of in the corporate world of WWE. But Eric stated in his response to that previous comment that almost everyone at the corporate level of WWE agreed that he was doing a great job, and I mean, for Christ's sakes, the guy was even featured on many commercials and definitely on Netflix as a whole TV show. Yet, one person in particular seemed to have a really odd judgment towards him. Now, if we go ahead and leverage another convenient Reddit post, something Eric has also mentioned in a couple interviews is his belief that the departure from Vince McMahon was what killed his career. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar, Vince was previously the CEO and chairman of the WWE. Though a couple years ago, around the time that this was all going down with Eric, Vince had stepped out of his role after a lawsuit was filed alongside of an article in the Wall Street Journal. This article alleged that there were several accounts of sexual abuse, sex trafficking, and a handful of really horrific crimes. Now, this isn't anywhere near the first time that any of this has gone to the press. Allegedly, the WWE has paid out several women over the past 20 years to keep things on the hush, even going to the point of having them sign NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, which for anyone who asks to sign an NDA, the one deal that will break an NDA is if you're being forced to do something illegal or something illegal is being done. Then you can cleanly come out about whatever you're doing without any legal repercussions. But a lot of people don't necessarily understand that because the writing can look quite scary. Just my opinion here, but you kind of have to be an idiot to think you can pay someone to be quiet because, well, inevitably they're just going to take your money and run. But if we're being honest, they could just simply even use that money to run to court and then likely win because they're not telling a lie, they're telling the truth and make even more money. The rabbit hole for Vince is a wild and deep rabbit hole, and it's not something I can necessarily cover as well as other YouTubers have on YouTube already, so I'm not even gonna go there. But to sum it up, he was involved with Diddy too. It's just about anything you need to know. Anyways, because of everything that happened with Vince, once he stepped down from his throne, Triple H took his place. Now, you might not be familiar with wrestling, but I guarantee you, if you've been alive for at least a few decades, you've certainly seen this guy before. Triple H has and was the face of wrestling for quite some time, playing a variety of different characters and bringing tons of viewership to the sport. Sport, or I don't know what you'd actually call it. But hold on, that sounds quite familiar to Eric, doesn't it? Well, it turns out that the two were both wrestling during the same time frame for a couple of years before Triple H settled into more corporate positions. And so all I can imagine is that when he stepped up into Vince's role and played the new creative director, he may have just wanted Eric gone out of some strange grudge or feelings of jealousy. Which, to be honest, doesn't really make sense from a business perspective, but given how great of a performer that Eric was, I imagine that he definitely stole a lot of the light from people who wanted it. Fortunately for Eric, though, he had begun to establish himself on YouTube years before this, so when he ended his wrestling career, it certainly didn't derail his life at all. And to be honest, what it really did was set him up for a brighter future where he could really control his own income. And it didn't take long for him to return to his roots either. His fitness-related content blew up, and his character that was extreme definitely contributed to that blow up. He built a cult-like following, and the people who subscribe to him are literally do-or-diers. Now, I actually think the content he produces is quite great. He's obviously got quite the overplayed personality, but in terms of his production quality, he seems to maintain that more than simple and authentic style, sticking to the way that he originally posted videos without really any post-production at all. And while Eric still posts gym videos of obscenely heavy lifts, which blows me away that he's even doing this just in his garage by himself without any motivation. But I mean, then again, lifting these kind of weights does get him banned from gyms. It's not all that he does. In fact, there's quite a bit more.
Hi fellas, it's Eric Bugenhagen, aka Dr. Density, better known as Mr. Sizzle, reporting in here to talk about the most highly anticipated but never replicated series in the frickin' YouTube universe.
I don't actually know if that's what he's gonna series these videos as, or this is the name of the series, but besides the point, this has to be some of the most refreshing content within the fitness education scene right now. You'll see why I'm saying this in a moment, but for context, the whole science-based lifting community has just gone in absolute haywire lately. People talking about bias and length and partials as the optimal way to train train, things like 52 set leg workouts being the best for hypertrophy. I mean, just coming out with really radical ideas that maybe aren't so founded in mechanism or any kind of reality. That's kind of the context I'm referring to when I say that it's a breath of fresh air when we can hear what Eric has to say. I am ultimately sick of these guys with PhDs trying to ram concepts down your throat like I can't make the joke on YouTube anymore. Yeah, I've gotten to the point now where YouTube's bots recognize this channel and sniff it out like fucking cocaine on a Mexican. But our buddy Eric here, he's got something to say about it. And not just this topic specifically, but the entire science-based scene as a whole.
I made a lot of Jeff ones, critiquing his tier rankings. I made other ones on, the science-based community. And for the most part, I'm always, Menno Henselman's. I like his stuff, If anything, I'm quite anti-hater for Menno Henselman, because he'll see something, he'll see a study and all that, but he'll still be like, you know what, I still think that's a load of horse crap, And I like that, because it's just like, you have a conclusive result from a study, but at the end of the day, you also have common logic, okay? I just don't like the stuff where it's like, well, the study says this, so we're gonna go all freaking in on this, right? And I think this video is gonna sum it up perfectly of that fanboying over singular techniques, intensity techniques.
Now, I'm sure you realized if you spend a moment scrolling through Eric's content that he's not training to be a bodybuilder, and he really couldn't care less about optimally training. And he's not here trying to deconstruct the whole thing and educate you on his concepts. I mean, he spent most of these types of videos just fucking rambling on, which takes him about 30 minutes to get to the point, but he just likes taking a piss out of all these guys. And honestly, at this point, I'd say it's both purely justified and absolutely hilarious. But now you're probably wondering, Kolton, what the hell have you just walked me through? All right, you went from talking about a guy who got into be a WWE superstar who is now just a shit poster on YouTube just like you. Why should I care? And you know what? I actually don't have an answer. I just thought he was an interesting guy and it was cool to make a video about him. I like making videos. Sorry. He's got an impressive career and I don't think many people know about it. And in fact, they only see him for his lifting content or on Instagram for the viral lifts that he does. You often think of a man as you see him and not as the man he was a week ago, a year ago, or 6 years ago. And so these kind of little deep dives are fun to do. Not everything has to have a deep and essential meaning, and wrestling for sure doesn't. So I guess that's your lesson. Take it or leave it. Eric's a dope guy. I think he's got some great concepts, and fuck it, he has a supplement company that sells some gnarly pre-workout. If you like this video, I would suggest letting me know down below. If you hated it, do the exact same and tell me I'm an absolute asshat. I love when people do that. It's great. It really makes my confidence shoot through the roof, and it makes my thing hard.
Jim Halpert. I'm so horny.
Not what you're thinking. Not what you're thinking. My algorithm presence go hard. Not what you're thinking. Or maybe it is what you're thinking. Maybe it could be. You wouldn't know. You can't even see below my waist in these videos, you idiots. You haven't even seen my hands most of the time. I could be doing anything. You have no idea what's going on underneath like this portion of the screen, buddies. Oh, the depths of despair. I could not even be wearing pants. Really. It's a possibility. Unlikely, very unlikely. All right, I'll just show you guys because look, see? All right, see? There's pants on. Look at that. Not doing OnlyFans yet. Not yet. Soon though, maybe. Soon. Shit's expensive. Crazy these days. What am I talking about? Subscribe, watch the next video.